media. It's our weekly touch base to share with you trending topics in the fashion industry, things you need to know and now. So, of course, top in the headlines, everybody's talking about this. We knew it was going to come. Terrific challenges.
Yes.
Yeah, so we are, of course, noticing significant impact across all segments of industry, but the fashion industry is reporting some really significant losses already. Stocks are
Down a bit.
down
Yeah.
quite a bit.
Yeah.
A lot of major brands like Nike, Gap, Ralph Lauren have reported up to 30% losses just in the last week.
Yeah, it's kind of a crazy time, of course, and stocks are reacting to the uncertainty and really the lack of clarity with what's going on with the whole tariff conversation. Um, the apparel sector is one of the industries that's particularly hard hit. U.S. apparel manufacturing represents less than 1% of all apparel manufacturing in the world. We abdicated it years ago. We don't have people in selling lines to a great degree in the U.S. It was funny. There was a meme that came out this morning showing a big old guy looking like a farmer sitting on a sewing machine saying, "Let's make America great again." That's not going to happen. Technology will find a way to bring some of that business back to the U.S., but in the meantime, we are getting hit pretty terrifically in terms of these tariffs. The tariffs are very, very high. They target our major manufacturing partners, and I think everyone's sitting down trying to figure out and hope that there's some sanity that comes back into it. Trump has a couple decisions. His decision can be people capitulate, they drop tariffs overseas, protective tariffs that they have, opening U.S. trade into those individual countries. Vietnam came, I think, yesterday and said, "Hey, we'll drop our stuff to 0% in terms of import tariffs on U.S. made goods." Trump can make a decision and say, "Hey, look, I was a great poker player. All these nations have dropped these protective tariffs. They dropped them to 0. I'm now, moving that whole thing that I've done and more
Honoring these
normalize that,
negotiations.
honorizing it,
Yes.
and really come away looking like a hero in respect to, the markets will go back up, stocks will go back up, people will feel like he's got to win. Behind the scenes, the real challenge that he's probably not considering is, without diplomacy, he's taking a wrecking ball to our relationships around the world, and that impacts the brand of America. Countries overseas, Vietnam and others, could drop their restrictive import tariffs on U.S. goods to 0, but if there's no demand for U.S. goods because we've wrecked our brand around the world, then really these countries aren't giving up anything. Rand Paul, in his pretty eloquent speech, I would say, on the negative impact of tariffs, said one thing that I thought, among others, but one particular thing that I thought was pretty interesting. He said, when American consumers buy goods, they buy them directly from a Chinese or other exporter or manufacturer. Governments don't buy goods from other governments. Consumers buy goods. So consumers are the catalyst for the economic volume of a particular good. And so if consumers in Europe and Canada and Asia are particularly upset with the diplomacy or the way that we're doing things in America, and it impacts the brand negatively, then frankly, we're going to have long-lasting consequences, even if there's this drop in terms of reciprocal tariffs in foreign countries. The other thing that Trump can do is he can leave them all in place. And I would tell you that doesn't bode well. That creates a real complex issue.
Globally catastrophic to the economies.
One, we wrecked the American brand overall. We continue to wreck it. We put deep-seated negative sentiment in the American brand. No one wants to buy America. There will never be a balance of trade, and everything that the American consumer buys gets way more expensive.
Right.
And if this whole war with China continues and China produces a lot of goods for us in America, then we start seeing emptier shelves, lack of, because they're, the theory behind the long-term tariffs is America will rebuild and will rebuild stuff in America. Well, that takes
Takes
years
time.
and decades. And then
Yeah.
as a few people
And
eloquently
investment.
pointed out yesterday, was that we have to import raw materials to build that. We don't have as much of that in the US. With massive tariffs, it becomes massively expensive,
Right.
and it takes years to do that. So it's if the second is the decision, long-term high tariffs stay in place, especially for the apparel industry, among others, then it's a wrong decision.
Yeah.
Tariffs have never worked. Republicans will lose their seat in the House like they did last time tariffs were put in for a long, long time, and Trump will look pretty bad.
Yeah, there have been estimates that just the recovery from all of these tariffs, should they remain in place, I've seen estimates from economists saying that it could take 50 years to recover the financial damage. In fact, Citibank downgraded earnings forecasts for major players in our industry in the last week: Levi Strauss, Ralph Lauren, VF, because of the escalation in cost relates to decrease in profit.
Well, increase in MSRPs and retail costs, which are going to decrease buying demand because they're spending so much on everything else. I mean, if you look at groceries, everyday commodity items, you look at utilities and electricity, they're going to be spending so much money on everything due to these tariffs. We're certainly going to see recessionary
Right.
trend.
And that's not just in the United States. Like we're really talking about global recession as
Yeah.
a result of these companies overseas losing their business.
Yeah.
So it impacts, it has.
Yeah, there should never be a case where a single person, even our president, America hasn't been built that way, that he can make this decision just arbitrarily. It should go through the House, it should go through the Senate. There should be a well-conceived plan. That's not happening today. That's not America. And so those things need to be adjusted. And hopefully uh, the both the Republicans and the Democrats come to an understanding and realize that, they need to step in.
Well, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll have better things to report on that side. There are segments of our industry that can benefit from these challenges. Slow fashion is going to look a lot better. Upcycling is going to look a lot better
Sure.
amid this trade war. And, we're seeing examples of that all throughout the industry right now. We're also hearing more possibilities around the elimination of de minimis.
Yeah, well, that was attempted before. I mean, we've talked about that in previous podcasts, that, you've got a billion packages coming in. And how do you all of a
A
sudden,
billion each year, right? A million a day are fast fashion.
yeah. And so how do you manage this tax collection, if you will, that didn't exist? De minimis was put in for a purpose, because in a reduced position of government, we're laying off workers right and left in government. You need workers to manage
all the imports.
all of the imports. And so a lot of this just goes back to not real well thought out plans. I think de minimis does create unfair trade for an unbalanced trade for
sure.
U.S. importers and U.S. companies that have to pay duties and tariffs, whatever they may be.
Right.
So that's certainly something that needs to be addressed. I would tell you that, maybe the de minimis clause needs to be reduced, but when you're looking at everyday trade packages that are coming back and forth, those are going to be now levied. There's not going to be zero cost to, in our industry, a lab dip coming in. It's going to be tariffs. So we have to be very, very careful about these wild swings in terms of decision making. But I would tell you something needs to be addressed with respect to de minimis. So I do respect the consideration. There just has to be a plan.
Another thing that we're seeing have a significant shift in our space. Trump officials have been cited to be reversing bans on toxic forever chemicals in our industry. This is huge, I think.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of those forever chemicals, um, why they were initially sought to be removed from our products, and what could the impact be.
Yeah, they do damage. I mean, they do damage to the environment. They do damage to human bodies, and therefore, with good reason, there's been a there's been an effort to reduce those. One of the most strict and rigid uh, acts that were put in place was California's Prop 65.
Right.
You know, those are examples, in my opinion, of propositions that are well intended, but are so all encompassing and so,
They're prohibitive in a lot.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
they're very, very difficult to to manage all the different aspects of that. Again, there has to be this process. There has to be this evolution,
Yeah.
not revolution. We have to identify issues with specific chemicals, and we have to walk down that path. But as has been happening in so much of the current administration, it's reducing oversight,
Yeah.
reducing conversations on, you know, eco-friendly and reduction of pollution and planet saving things in favor of ramping up big business. And so
Mhm.
I think that this is a misguided decision, but
Mhm.
there are a lot of those right now. So it just add this to the pot.
Right, right. Let's talk about something that's kind of a little more intriguing and an evolution in our space. We've had a lot of conversations about AI and innovation in our industry. Just last week, in our Quantum Runway intersection of fashion and technology event that we hosted, we were talking about the advent of digital twins in our space, and H&M is now doing something right along this measure.
They really are. They're having AI build really cool models to show off their product. And
Mhm.
we've seen that happen in the movie industry. Now it's making its way into fashion. Certainly people are concerned that's going to replace real humans. H&M has come back and said, hey, it's not going to replace. We're still going to
Well,
have a
they're
robust.
actually using real people to inform and
Yes.
compensating these people. So it
Yes.
is a
So they're saying that it's not going to reduce, the impact on humans in general, or
well,
the use of modeling or whatever. They're
yeah.
kind of creating a new evolutionary kind of curve. But I would tell you the reality is that lure is pretty tempting. If you can create artificial humans and replace actual humans at lesser cost, I would tell you that's going to happen in the future. We're
Well,
going to see more of
as
that.
companies are looking for ways to save money
Yeah.
to kind of rebuild some of that deficit that's accruing right now, I can understand that temptation. However, if you're looking at the digital twin approach, why don't you share some of those benefits of that evolution of having the digital twin?
There's probably a lot of benefits. When you're seeing digital twin development, even from a personal level, when you're talking about personalization, there's still somewhat of a trend with personalization. But if you're creating a digital twin of yourself, for instance, then you can take that digital twin online to different spaces and you can dress that digital twin and interact with other digital
Mhm.
people. And then as you kind of move back into the physical world, you've got the physical person wearing similar items. We talk about that
Sure.
digital space back and forth. Um, and I think that we're going to see more and more of that. We're going to, we kind of move back between digital and physical as human beings all the time. We're
Yeah.
constantly working with that. So I think digital twins can do that. Moving your digital twin and having the attributes of yourself in a digital environment can help when you're trying on clothes into online space,
Right.
because you'll see how things actually fit as technology allows your digital twin to go try them on. You'll be able to see how that looks, and it'll reduce returns and exchanges. So,
Certainly saves your hair from having to physically try on clothes
or your
and your
digital
makeup.
twin's hair is
Yeah.
really funny.
Right.
There's probably digital hairspray that will help with that, I suppose.
That's right. Well, those are some of the exciting highlights from this week. We will be back here next week at noon to catch you up on what's happening in between now and then. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast so that you can stay apprised of what's happening in our industry. And thank you again for joining us. If there's topics that you would like us to address, don't forget to send them our way. Thank you.
And hold on, don't